Crowley had thought about this for some time, and around about 1023 had said, hang on, that only works, right, if you start everyone off equal, okay? You can't start someone off in a muddy shack in the middle of a war zone and expect them to do as well as someone born in a castle. Ah, Aziraphale had said, that's the good bit. The lower you start, the more opportunities you have. Crowley had said, that's lunatic. No, said Aziraphale, it's ineffable. Aziraphale, the enemy, of course, but an enemy for 6,000 years now, which made him a sort of friend. Crowley reached down and picked up the car phone. Being a demon, of course, was supposed to mean you had no free will. But you couldn't hang around humans for very long without learning a thing or two. Mr. Young had not been too keen on Damien or Wormwood or any of Sister Mary Loquacious' other suggestions, which had covered half of hell and most of the golden years of Hollywood. Well, she said finally, a little hurt, I don't think there's anything wrong with Errol or Carey. Very nice American names, both of them. I had fancied something more, well, traditional, explained Mr. Young. We've always gone in for good, simple names in our family. Sister Mary beamed. That's right. The old names are always the best, if you ask me. A decent English name, like people had in the Bible, said Mr. Young. Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, he said, speculatively. Sister Mary winced. Only they've never struck me as very good Bible names, really, Mr. Young added. They sound more like cowboys and footballers. Saul's nice, said Sister Mary, making the best of it. I don't want something too old-fashioned, said Mr. Young. Or Cain. Very modern sound. Cain, really? Sister Mary tried. Mr. Young looked doubtful. Or there's always Adam, said Sister Mary. That should be safe enough, she thought. Adam, said Mr. Young. It would be nice to think that the Satanist nuns had the surplus baby, Baby B, discreetly adopted. That he grew to be a normal, happy, laughing child, active and exuberant, and after that grew further to become a normal, fairly contented adult. And perhaps that's what happened. Let your mind dwell on his junior school prize for spelling, his unremarkable, although quite pleasant time at university, his job in the payroll department of the Tadfield and Norton Building Society, his lovely wife. Possibly you would like to imagine some children and a hobby. Restoring vintage motorcycles, perhaps, or breeding tropical fish. You don't want to know what could have happened to Baby B. We like your version better, anyway. He probably wins prizes for his tropical fish. In a small house in Dorking, Surrey, a light was on in a bedroom window. Newton Pulsifer was 12 and thin and bespectacled, and he should have been in bed hours ago. His mother, though, was convinced of her child's genius and let him stay up past his bedtime to do his experiments. His current experiment was changing a plug on an ancient Bakelite radio his mother had given him to play with. He sat at what he proudly called his worktop, a battered old table covered in curls of wire, batteries, little light bulbs, and a homemade crystal set that had never worked. He hadn't managed to get the Bakelite radio working yet either. But then again, he never seemed to be able to get that far. 3 slightly crooked model airplanes hung on cotton cords from his bedroom ceiling. Even a casual observer could have seen that they were made by someone who was both painstaking and very careful, and also no good at making model airplanes. He was hopelessly proud of all of them, even the Spitfire, where he'd made rather a mess of the wings. He pushed his glasses back up the bridge of his nose, squinted down at the plug, and put down his screwdriver. He had high hopes for it this time. He had followed all the instructions on plug changing on page 5 of the boy's own book of practical electronics, including 101 safe and educational things to do with electricity. He had attached the correct colour-coded wires to the correct pins. He'd checked that it was the right amperage fuse. He'd screwed it all back together. So far, no problems. He plugged it into the socket. Then he switched the socket on. Every light in the house went out. Newton beamed with pride. He was getting better. Last time he'd done it, he'd blacked out the whole of Dorking, and a man from the electric had come over and had a word with his mum. He had a burning and totally unrequited passion for things electrical. They had a computer at school, and half a dozen studious children stayed on after school doing things with punched cards. When the teacher in charge of the computer had finally acceded to Newton's pleas to be allowed to join them, Newton had only ever got to feed one little card into the machine. It had chewed it up and choked fatally on it. Newton was certain that the future was in computers, and when the future arrived, he'd be ready, in the forefront of the new technology. The future had its own ideas on this. It was all in the book. Adam, thought Mr. Young. He tried saying it to see how it sounded. Adam. He stared down at the golden curls of the adversary, destroyer kings, angel of the bottomless pit, great beast that is called dragon, prince of this world, father of lies, spawn of Satan, and lord of darkness. You know, he concluded after a while, I think he actually looks like an Adam.